Without doubt, I think it's by far the best league in the world.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League? Mission accomplished in the Premier League. The American.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of American Scouser TV's Premier League show. This is the Match Week 16 review. I am your host, as always, Gally. I am joined by Timucin, as Bickler has some child recital / functioning holiday party. I just feel like he just probably didn't want to have to talk about what was a weird-ass Premier League weekend, so he pawned it off on the sick guy. So we bring in Timucin, normally in host chair number 1, tonight sitting in co-host chair number 2. How are we feeling? What's going on? What's happening in Chicago? Got you so under the weather?
I don't know, man. It's like a nonstop changing weather. I mean, it's the Midwest way, Chicago way. If anybody's from Chicago, they know it was like negative, feels like -5. Then it feels like 40. Then it's 10 again. It's just like, ideal weather to get sick. And I managed it. I did get sick. So nothing, a little bit of Dayquil can't at least get me through the shows. And then we'll see what happens tonight. Probably some NyQuil. So
I was just going to say that is basically the equivalent of how our weekend went. It was a whole bunch of Dayquil pills so Kelly could get through the day to try to help out with the heathen of a dog that we have in the snow and crap and non-weather. It was not a weekend for the smoke man because there weren't many walks in between snow flurries and rain and muck. And mom was sick, so that never makes things any better. So he just basically made dad crazy, otherwise known as me. But if we're going to talk about the carousel or the craziness that is the Chicago weather and your sickness, we might as well talk about a little bit of the coaching carousel happening right now in the Premier League. So 4 faces on the screen, all rumored in and out of jobs over the last few weeks / months between Gary O'Neill at Wolves. At times, we've heard about pressure mounting on Eddie Howe at Newcastle, though I think that has more to do with like the papers wanting to write articles about Newcastle for some reason than it really is Eddie Howe being up for a move. Everton's up and down struggles with Sean Dyche. And of course, the inevitable firing that was Russell Martin being a Premier League manager, coaching a championship team, playing as if they're Pep Guardiola's side, playing out from the back. So obviously, we wake up this morning with news basically that I think actually the first news broke Sunday morning that Gary O'Neill was out. And then, of course, this morning that Russell Martin was out, though I would argue, I'm pretty sure the people at Southampton decided to fire him when it was 5-0 after 11 minutes in the Tottenham match. Let's start with Gary O'Neill because I think we talked a lot about that on our pod. So Wolves in itself, is this a Gary O'Neill problem? Is this a Wolves problem? Like, where does Wolves go from here?
it's a bit of both, probably. I actually listened to, I think it just showed up as like a short or a reel or whatever it was, one of these social media things. And it was Gary O'Neill's, I think it was like post-match or something like that. And he talked about, and it's like a minute long or so. And I know exactly what he's saying. Like, he made a good case of why things are shitty right now. And that's what, that it was not going to be easy this year. And he talked about a lot about, like, whether it's injuries or the fact that they sold like 100 million worth of people. So, and did not replace him. So he makes a good case, right? And I was actually in this morning show, I was talking to Matish about this as a, Liverpool fan, or like a, couldn't care less about, what's going on at Wolves or whatever. I listened to that as a neutral, and I'm like, I hear you, man. I know where you're coming from. But I don't know how the players would take that, or I don't know how somebody in the organization would take your manager saying that, because it sounded, or it came across as it's going to be like this for quite some time. Like he didn't finish it off as we're almost there, like in a couple of weeks, or like once this Christmas season is over, like you kind of like sometimes get the manager saying, oh, see us after the 10th week is the beginning of the season or whatever, like kind of like punt it away, as we would say in American football, and then live to see another day and set a goal whereby then the team is going to be. When your manager comes out and says that stuff, as true as it is, and this is what we do, right? When they say the truth serum, when they give it to you, we don't like it, or fans don't like it because it's too real. But then when they give the company line or just the standard answer, we're like, they're not being honest. But I get it. I took it as I'm like, that's honest and he's right. But I don't know how you can say that and then still be respected in the locker room. You can tell. Excuse me. You can tell it's a very, very frustrated squad. You see the end of these games, the fights that the players get into. You can tell everybody is frustrated with it. And sometimes I like Gary O'Neill, but sometimes you just need a new voice to come in and kind of calm things down and say, hey, it's not as bad as you guys think, and then move from there.
Yeah, I think if they had gotten a draw in that match and the game ends 1-1, I don't think we would have seen the crazy scenes at the end of the match that we saw with the players having to escort each other off the pitch. I mean, guy got a red card after the final minute. Like, I don't even know how it happens. Guy got sent off during stoppage time. He also made a comment about the actual work that was being done on that final corner where the goal is scored. And he basically tells flat out, like, I don't know what to tell you. Two players just completely decide to switch positions, go to different areas that we worked on all week long in the biggest moment. And he even said, he goes, this happens sometimes during matches, but it doesn't happen in stoppage time when you're hanging on in a 1-1 draw in a match you need. And he's like, I can't tell you that they don't score the goal, but I'm confident if those two players are in the positions they're supposed to be on the pitch, we deal with that header, we clear it out, and the game ends in a draw. At some point, the players have to do the job they're asked to on the pitch. Craig Dawson, after the match, said that was absolutely the case. That basically, he actually said three players, and I'm pretty sure he was talking about Ryan Aït-Nouri, who was supposed to be the one on the back post, who decided to just go cover the front post and leave the back post completely wide open at the end of the game and then lose his ever-bleeping mind. Do you think that is just frustration of a bunch of guys who know it's not going right? They know they don't have the answers within that side to get out of this problem? Or do you think it is just poor leadership, poor man management? Because to me, one thing Gary O'Neill teams usually look like, whether it was back at Bournemouth or when he was in the championship, they're usually very well drilled, well coached sides, which I guess that's why this is so shocking to me.
I think it's a matter of that's more on the players than the coaching, I think, when it happens in an isolated incident. If it happens over and over again, then you're like, hey, this is a coaching issue. But I think when it happens is more on the players. And yeah, that's an accumulation of frustration. You know what you need to do. You can be drilled and you know exactly what you have to do. But sometimes, we're all human. People react in different ways when a couple of the things change. They probably went out to that game thinking we have to win this. This is the game that we have to win. And maybe they felt during the game, like after they tied it up, it might happen and stuff like that, right? But I think, like I say, when you're frustrated and your mind goes all over the place, it's easier to make mistakes. I remember we had decided to talk about my retail days, but we had like a warehouse outside. And, you go over with your assistants, all that kind of stuff. They know exactly what needs to be done. But when that freaking fire alarm is going because of pipe froze outside, and he's like, I turned the valve. I'm like, why would you turn the valve on and put water in the freezing? It's like -10, middle of winter in Chicago, and flood the entire lines and stuff. It's just panic, right? Like, you don't know. It's just frustration, panic. You don't know what's going on. I just feel like it's one of those. Like, they felt like they had to win that game. You felt it at the end of the last game too. The heads just go. And man, like, this is a sports, this is the peak level over here all you need is to be 10% off, 15% off to make that mistake. It doesn't take a whole lot. And I think that's what happens. I mean, you can clearly tell people are not where they're supposed to be. Or you can just, when we look at it, we're like, it's poor defending. You watch it again, you're like, that makes no sense. Like in terms of how they were lined up and stuff. And then he talks about it. I just take that as frustration. And that's why you can't change the players, unfortunately, and make people unfrustrated. So what you do is you change the voice. Like I say, they probably need somebody to come in and calm the troops and say, it's not as bad as you guys think. Oh, we have to do this, and we're in good shape. It's hard for Gary O'Neill to say that when he goes out last week and says, well, what are you going to do? We sold guys, never replaced them. We're trying to work on it, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot easier for a new voice to do that. Probably unfair to Gary, but this is how this shit rolls, really.
So speaking of the new voice, there's rumors that Vitor Pereira, the Portuguese coach, is basically in line to come in. We'll go real quick on this one. I'll just ask you because I know you have experience with him as manager at Fenerbahce, and you did enjoy his time there. And I know you never get too much time with a manager at Fenerbahce, so you had to enjoy it while you had him because you could have 3 of them in the next month. But do you see, from your experience and what you've watched, does this man have the mettle to come in on December 16th? Supplant it deep in a relegation zone inside of the Premier League and find a way out? Or could this be a hire with an eye that if we go down, this is a guy who might be able to get us back up?
I would probably hope, for Wolves' sake, it's the latter because I liked him. He's actually, I think he used to work with Mourinho back in the day, in his earlier days. So he is Mourinho Jr. The difference is, especially when you're dealing with the Turkish media and stuff like that, Mourinho can come out and say stuff over there. It's the same thing with British media. You can say stuff there when you won. You can say respect, respect, and walk out the room. But you can't do that when we're Vitor and you haven't won anything and you're like traveling the world to Korea and Saudi Arabia and Turkey and stuff like that. So that was the main difference. But he is very good at taking some players, and like Ferdi, who's in Brighton now. He used to be a winger before Vitor came over there. Osai Samuel, who came from Queen's Park Rangers, used to be a winger. He made him like a wing back. He made him a right back. He literally made Ferdi to the player he is now. I mentioned this Kim, who's at center back in Bayern now, went over there from Fenerbahce. He's the one who brought him over from Korea. Nobody knew anything about him. He brought him over to Fenerbahce.
Before he went to Napoli and then got his move to Bayern, right?
Fenerbahce sold him to Napoli for a bunch of money. And then Napoli took that, doubled it up, and sent him to Bayern afterwards. So he's a good guy in terms of, getting the most out of guys. So maybe Wolves likes that and feels like they have some good parts just not being used correctly. The only thing is, this is the Premier League, and you're coming in the middle of the season. I don't know if he's going to be able to say that. So I would guess, to answer your question, more is the latter. So even if he can't turn it around, we can have him keep the keys next season in the championship, and he will bring him back up.
Does it matter at all that Southampton made a move, or is this just appeasing the fans to say, we're not going to make you watch Russell Martin manage this team midweek against Liverpool in the League Cup quarterfinals because we were down 5-0 to a Premier League side and we just can't compete?
I thought the game was over. I thought it started early when I saw the score, by the way. Like, I looked at the score and I was like, oh, I thought they were at the same time. I'm like, oh, shit, they are at the same time. That escalated quickly. I don't know. This is probably something they should have done a month ago. Or this is a conversation that should have been had a month ago. We joked, on the podcast and stuff like that. Russell Martin wants to be the next Vincent Kompany and go to another top club in the world after falling on his face after bringing the team from championship, playing the same style and stuff. But everybody knew it. Everybody could see it. Why wait until now where you're almost becoming a hopeless case? Right. They're 6 points off the bottom, safety. I think maybe it's not the end of the world, but how many points have you gotten that you got to catch up 6 points now? So I think it's a little bit late, but we'd rather do it now than later. I think if you're Southampton, because at least you're giving yours a chance. Clearly, this guy says, this is the way I play, and there's nothing else. And anybody in their right mind could have told you over the last month and a half, this is not the way. Like Mandalorian, this is the way. Like, this is not the way. So it's like, why would you keep? I understand you have like a philosophy, blah, 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 but you gotta, sprinkle some realism in that and know what you're working with and know when to enforce that philosophy and when to play to get that. When you brought up that picture earlier, that's one thing about Shandush, as I like to call him, is that he knows, like, ugly or not, this is what gets a point. So I don't care how ugly it is, we're going to get the point. And that's how Everton has survived, because
saw it on display. Saw it on display at the Emirates this weekend when they just absolutely mucked up a game against a quality side like Arsenal. And to be honest, in some ways, Everton actually had the better chances overall in the match. And you would have thought the set pieces would come to Arsenal's way, yet Everton did what they had to do, which was defend all those set pieces and dare them to try to score from open play. Yeah. And they just couldn't happen. They couldn't make it happen. So real quick, if you were Southampton, would you consider either of the recently fired managers? Like, would you consider Gary O'Neill an answer? Would you consider Steve Cooper an answer? Because they both have experience in the Premier League, like real experience in the Premier League, both success and failures. Like, would you give one of them a shot, or would you be looking for a fire sale manager? I've heard nothing about what Southampton could be thinking about doing. And for all I know, they appointed someone already. I think they said the youth manager is going to take charge on Wednesday.
Oh, like in there kind of thing.
What would you be doing if you were Southampton?
I know I'm against the retreads, like American NBA style, the same guys just rotating around the league kind of a thing. I would rather a club in that situation. Wolves a little bit different, right? Their situation is a bit better, obviously, than Southampton. I would try to go what you were saying with Vitor earlier. Like, get a guy who might be able to do it, but if he can't, you don't have to look for a new guy next year. If you bring Cooper, if he can't do it, you get relegated. Do you want to stick with Cooper still, or are you going to bring somebody? Right. You know what I mean? So I would, if I'm an owner, that's what I would do. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but I would try to think more long-term. Long-term in soccer is like a year and a half. So like I would think long-term as opposed to just getting a guy that's, like Sam or Big Sam or somebody like that just to save you for like 3 months kind of a deal. Because you have time if you bring the right guy. Yeah, I mean, you said match week 16, so you have a lot of time. We're not even halfway there yet.
So talking about halfway there, I think there's some folks in Manchester City who wish the season was more than halfway over because they can't believe what they're witnessing. And they sure as hell can't believe what they saw yesterday. So as the graphic says, Ahmad wins it. City gave it to him. I mean, you couldn't have two better gifts than what were given between the penalty. That was just an absolute ridiculous penalty award. And then, of course, the mistake, and then and good on him. The finish is outstanding in extra time. What is happening in Manchester? And I'll ask you on both sides. So on one side, can we make any heads or tails, or is it just literally a perfect storm in City between age, injury, and the squad kind of falling off? Is this have to do with the 115? Like, what is going on at Manchester City that makes it so that they can't even compete? And when they do, they genuinely look like a second-rate side.
Makes you wonder, right? I mean, these guys did not get old in like 3 months. So while I know what you mean, and there's some they did not replace some of the guys and some people are getting older and stuff like that. I do agree to that, but there has to be something else in the background, right? Like there are rumblings in the background. They're hearing things and maybe like it gets in their head. So, and that shows, we were talking about earlier, this is the top level. And that was a top team that had to perform at a certain level, Pep and all that kind of stuff. But when your focus is not there, number one, and more importantly, I feel like their confidence is shot. And I think, all these losses and stuff, that 3-0 to 3-3 in the Champions League is probably the example. You could tell the moment it became 1-1, you were like, United might score another one. You didn't say City will score it. 2 years ago, you would say City still has time. City might get another one in. But now
They're
you
going to win 3-1.
The moment it was 1-1, we were actually watching it live with my brother at the same time because it was right after the Fenerbahce game. We're about to go on air. I was like, oh, let's finish the game. And you were like, United might score because they get shaky, just making I don't know what the hell happened to Ederson. One Saudi offer and the guy's like lost it totally. So I think it's like a whole confidence thing where if you're constantly winning, you feel like on the pitch, we're going to win. So everything is a lot calmer. You don't panic. It's like, the hero wins at the end. It's like a cheesy thriller movie. You don't panic because the guy's not going to die. He didn't die because he's going to win at the end. So that's how you play. You have that comfort level. But when things go bad, man, anytime something goes bad, you're like, here we go again. And I think that's in the mode they're in right now. And Pep has never been there. So it's harder for him, I think, to figure out like how to get him out of there. It's one thing to build a team and then, growing pains, blah, blah, blah. But once it collapses, to rebuild it with most of the same parts the same is challenging. And I think he's finding guy. He has no answers. And that's why we talked about him. I know you talked about it a lot on the Monday Night Podcast before about him over tinkering sometimes. And it feels like he's trying to fix stuff. How about this here? How about this there? And it's like he's confused as well. I mean, it's a joy to watch. That's a different story.
It is definitely a joy to watch. And we've said this before. I think I mentioned it once, and I know Bickler's talked about it as well on the Monday pods or even on this show, is that, City proved that they are the prototypical bully. Like they are just a front runner that if things aren't going well, they just become a completely petulant club. Almost like what Chelsea looked like under the last few managers. Like that Chelsea at the end of Conte, Chelsea under Sarri, when you'd have 11 Chelsea players surrounding a referee yelling about a call.
It's like an entitlement thing going.
Yes, I feel like that's what happens at City whenever times get tough. But I also think that comes from the manager goading the Liverpool supporters with his sixes. And we all thought it was funny, right? We talked about how we were okay with it. But at the end of the day, I don't think I would have been okay with it if I were a City supporter. But let's talk about the other half, right? The red side of the town for a little bit. It pains us to say positive things, but when you get a victory like that, and it has not been a great start for the new manager, he came into this match, in my opinion, dropping two of his most talented 10 players in Garnacho and Rashford. And he didn't drop them from the 11. He dropped them from the match day squad in a derby. And when asked if it was disciplinary, he said, no. This is straight down to effort and commitment. I'll flip the question. Regardless of the 3 points that United got yesterday and how good they wake up feeling today, if you're a United supporter, if I put you in Mark Goldbridge's world right now, right, waking up trying to spin this positive, outside of the 3 million euros he's going to make this year that you're not going to, what is your temperament this morning knowing that on one hand, your manager did what you've wanted all United managers to do, which is take a stand against these players. On the other hand, there's that much rot that with a brand new manager and all this excitement, these players are still trying to torpedo any advancement at that club.
It's kind of like a weird deal, right? So he comes in and I don't know, like this new manager smell thing goes a couple of games and then, like it went and then it came back. Like Ruud won against Leicester. Everybody was like, Ruud is soccer. So the new manager smell is there. I think he's extremely lucky. We did this to Ten Hag, I think. Didn't we? Didn't he bench somebody against us? And then we let him freaking we lost that game and we were like, man, we basically helped him out. I can't remember who was it Maguire at the time? Somebody got cut out of the equation. But I think the best thing that happened to Emery is the fact that they won. Because if they lose, it becomes a whole different ordeal, right? You don't, especially if you lose 1-0. This is why those guys are important. You can't get anything going. You can't score without them, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing. I think what happens now is important. Because there's a reason why no other manager did this before. Because it's not only Rashford and Garnacho. I mean, this goes in like clicks, right? So there are other players probably not happy about how Rashford is being treated or how Garnacho was treated, blah, 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 and stuff. So how he handles the drama afterwards, and more importantly, how do those two guys handle it afterwards? Because when Ten Hag did it to Sancho, everybody was like, see, finally, a Manchester United manager doing, like pulling the plug on somebody who's not giving effort. But he was like an easy target because he was the newer dude. So whereas when you do with Rashford and Garnacho, who's been around for a while, who have a lot of buddies in that locker room overall who will support them, do they react and say, because I just don't see those two guys saying, like, you know what, you're right, I should probably watch what I eat. Because he was talking about like what they're eating, blah, blah, blah. So I don't see them saying, or maybe this is me wishful thinking because I want more drama at United, but I see them more like, not seeing the lights and more spreading the poison that they have all these other members of their clique kind of like in the background saying Rashford should be playing. I saw him eat a broccoli last night and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think we're going to find out in the next week or two. I think this is crucial. This was a huge win for him to help those 2 weeks. Because if they lose, like I say, I don't think he has a hand. Now he has a hand, but let's see when Rashford and Garnacho put their cards on the table, who has the better hand over these next 2 weeks.
So let me ask you, what does your gut tell you the outcome of this is? Because to me, I don't think he did this to Rashford without the approval of Ineos. Like, I think the Manchester United board allowed this. And I think that's a big difference here. Mourinho made it very clear. There are multiple players that are still at the club now that I didn't want there. That is as nice of a way to say, I did not want Marcus Rashford, Anthony Martial, right? Or Harry Maguire. Like, it's basically about as nice as you can say, like, or Luke Shaw, right? They're the only players left.
Yeah.
So it's probably them. So my question to you is I think he probably had the okay to do this because I think they're trying to finally back someone and say this is a long-term plan. End of January 31st, is Marcus Rashford still a member of Manchester United? I'm not sure he is.
You don't think so? Who's going to pay that
I think
money?
there's a chance he's foreign. I think there's a chance he's literally playing at West Ham.
Do you think so? I don't know. I don't think so. I think this drama kind of continues at least till summer. I think there's still United players. And you're probably right. This was probably discussed, maybe not name specific, but he probably wanted, authority to be able to install discipline. And they're not going to be like, no discipline. They're going to be like, yeah, you do whatever. But it's one thing to say you do whatever and then be like, wait, well, not that. Or, well, we don't want to deal with this afterwards either. So that's why I feel like these next few weeks are more important than what happened this weekend. But winning helps that. If they lose next week and they can't score goals, like they get eliminated, like they play Tottenham, right, in the cup, and then, they lose like 3-0 to Spurs, this whole thing will flip. And that's why it's very like up and down with United. That's why they don't get the consistency on the pitch, because there's not consistency off the pitch. Like I said, I think there's still United players. I don't know if this worked or not. We're going to have to see what else he does in the next few weeks. But I think you're right. He was probably given the green light to do what he feels needed to install discipline. But sometimes you're like, see how that worked? And then meanwhile, like he's getting a gang in the background, like with pitchforks against you, and you might not see that. So
I give him credit for the move because I think it takes big stones to be a brand new manager at a club like United and go into your first big match, which is what a derby is, like that on the road at City, and to do it and drop two of what were the prior manager's first 11 almost every single week. I think to drop them in that match, especially knowing how polarizing of a figure Marcus Rashford is at that club, I think is a big shout. And then when you get the win, I think that's what you want out of your manager. I don't know what's going to work for him long term, but I do feel like there are times when a manager makes a move like that. And part of the way you make sure you don't lose that underswell of his buddies in the dressing room is you don't then reinstate him to play against Spurs.
And
To
that's
me,
why it's
this-
like, really shaky. But it's the best time to do it, isn't it? Like, you want to do it when you're new, because you don't want to come in for 2 months, deal with him, whatever the hell he was doing, like, roaming around the pitch, not doing it. And then 2 months later, be like, okay, now that I've been established. So this is the time to do it, I think. That's why, I mean, yeah, kudos to him for having the guts to do it. But maybe I'm just being optimistic that I want more drama, and it's not going to happen. So,
well, speaking of drama,
There
we
you
don't
go.
have to look far away from our VAR weekend reviews to find the drama. So let's do this. Let's start with a couple of quick, kind of high level, hot button topics. There were a few different ones. Obviously, we're going to spend a little time on the Liverpool-Fulham match. I'm sure we'll talk about it in our podcast, and we will talk about it during this segment. But Aston Villa versus Forest. Forest scores a game-winning goal late in stoppage time. There is what I believe is a pretty clear foul on Matty Cash in the build-up to the play of that goal. VAR does take a look at it. It was a very strong challenge. It's 50-50 whether it's a foul. And for that, I think I'm okay with them not chalking a goal off, especially a stoppage time winner. At what point will they figure out a way to determine how far you go back and what type of a foul is a foul? Because I've seen goals chalked off for less contact than that. I've seen goals chalked off for weaker handballs in a buildup. Where do you stand when it comes to removing goals from the game? I know Bickler and I have always said VAR should not be here to remove goals from the game. It should be here to enhance the game. And it often feels like it's a way to re-adjudicate the game. Did you have a problem with that foul not being called? I know Villa has a huge problem with it. They drop points. Where do you stand on fouls in the buildup? Does it have to be like the most blatant and clear foul for you to take a goal away? Like, what's too much? What's not enough?
I don't agree with the VAR should not be taking away goals. VAR should be making things right. If that's taking away a goal, that's taking away a goal. If that, whatever it is, VAR should make things right. I don't think they should have a goal in mind. Like, we want to make sure you did. No, just make it right. Help the guy on the pitch if whatever he didn't see. I felt that was pretty 50-50. And that goes back to the clear and obvious thing, right? Like, if it's not that clear that it's a foul, they're not going to go back and change that. That is a big dilemma in terms of how far do they go back to watch it. And I think, like, is it when the moment you win the possession and that on? But then that could be like freaking like a minute and a half sometimes if you're like switching from side to side and stuff like that. So, but I don't, like I say, when it comes to VAR, I just wanted to make sure the decision is right. Or it's not terribly wrong, I guess, if you're going with the clear and obvious thing. Because it goes back to basically, it might not be right, but it's not wrong. That's fine. Like, you're washing your hands off of it and you're like, the guy on the pitch, will leave it to him. I understand that. I felt it was 50-50, so I did not think, when I saw it, I'm like, they're not going to switch that around. I can see why they would not switch that around. And obviously, that's why they didn't. I mean, I watched it afterwards anyway, but like, you can kind of be like, yeah, they're not going to, not for that kind of a deal. What I don't like about VAR, don't get me started on VAR, but not on VAR by itself, but in general with these fouls is, what I find bullshit is that's not enough. Like, pundits say, like, oh, that's not enough for a penalty. If it's a foul, it's a foul. And if it's in the box, it's a penalty. That's how it should be. You shouldn't have to like stab someone in the box for it to be a penalty. So the not enough contact thing just freaking kills me. If you are going to call a foul, if it's in the middle of the pitch, it should be a penalty in the box. I know it's a lot more, but that's why you got to be careful in the box and not go for those tackles. So that's my biggest beef with the fouls. But on that one, yeah, I thought it was 50-50. It could have gone either way. I don't know if they're not going to change it on VAR, but if they called the foul right there in the middle of the game, nobody would be like, what? It would just be play on.
And we talked about Ipswich Wolves and the second goal. Wolves wanted there to be an offside call for a potential player being in an offside position on that game-winning goal before Taylor gets the header in. There is a player for Ipswich that's clearly offsides, but he's not. He's standing to the side of the keeper. Is this another one of those where you're like, it didn't get anywhere near the attacker. He had no bearing on the play. If you don't want to give up the goal, save it. Or is the defender in you saying the guy's in an offside position? Anything he does puts the keeper off, and therefore that goal should not have counted.
I mean, that's what as a defender, I hate the shit. Like, I mean, the whole, he's off, but he is affecting how I play the game. So he is in the game, is the way
does the law need to be changed at this point?
I mean, that's the thing. Like,
okay, that's what I'm asking.
Kind of thing, because I feel like if it's affecting, we had this a couple of weeks ago where it was like the back post or something like that, and somebody couldn't head it because there was somebody behind them who was off. So they couldn't clear it properly, and somebody else scored it. And I mean, I couldn't clear it properly because I was worried the guy behind me would get the ball. This is why I hate until they touch the ball, they're not off.
That was the rule. That was shockingly, that was Wolves against City when they chalked the goal off and said it didn't count, but then went to VAR to decide that Bernardo Silva's too short, and therefore the goal should count.
Yeah, man. I mean, I hate that because it, like I say, as a defender, you're constantly looking around, you're looking over your shoulder, you got to know where everybody is. And if I know the guy is there, and I feel like, I mean, I don't know, like obviously back in the day when I played, I mean, he's an idiot. He shouldn't be offside, right? So I got to keep an eye on him. I got to double check my line and all that kind of stuff. So he's clearly affecting what I do as a player. I just think they got to reevaluate that rule because it really, I know they want more scoring and all that kind of crap probably because this damn younger generation wants more goals. But I really think it just like affects, man, it's probably attackers must love it because you can really you see more and more set pieces being played like that now too. Like the guy is clearly off, but he's not in the play, blah blah. So people are more and more. I feel like teams are kind of like getting the best out of this thing, manipulation, right? And that's why I probably hate it. I wish they would just go back to regular.
So we got a couple minutes left here, and we got 3 topics. We'll hit them really quick. The Liverpool, we're going to talk a lot more about this in detail, I'm sure, this entire match during our weekly podcast that we do every week on Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern on our channels. Get in there, get in live, subscribe. Don't forget to comment during the shows. We'll get those read on air. But the Liverpool versus Fulham match had 3 massive VAR calls. The third, and the one that's probably the least egregious to me, believe it, is the one that I think people are the most upset about because maybe it's the player involved. And that was the Andres Pereira foul on Gravenberch. I did think it looked really nasty in real time. And when you slowed it down, I could understand why some folks felt that it should be a red card. For me, it felt very much like the Ndidi challenge against the Chelsea, against Palmer a couple weeks ago, where they called it a yellow. Then Howard Webb said it should have been a red. But then the panel that Howard Webb employs said, nope, 4-1. We think maybe it should have been a red, but it absolutely should not have been an instance where VAR got involved based on the on-field criteria. What was your thoughts on that one, knowing that the referee gave a yellow from 2 feet away and could see the tackle? Like, were you okay with that one being a yellow even after seeing the replays?
Not after seeing the replay. Like, initially, I was like, holy cow. And then, okay, that's a yellow. But then when you watch it, and this all goes back to inconsistency, seeing them given crap comes out because you've seen reds given for that. So how come this is not a red? I mean, we all go back to the famous Curtis Jones thing and stuff, right? So, like, we've seen, like, reds given throughout for that by pausing where the contact is. How come it's not paused there? I mean, I did not think... Go ahead.
No, I guess my question is, though, is knowing it was called a yellow on the field and knowing what the laws actually state about a VAR overturn for a red card. I honestly think if there's no foul called, he's sent off for that challenge. But I think because it's called a yellow on the field, I don't know by the letter of the law, right or wrong, written, right? I don't know you can say that that's a clear and obvious error, seeing the fact that the guy saw the tackle, saw the foul, and it was within realm of borderline. Like, I think it
Wasn't
could
the
have.
Curtis Jones example, for example, wasn't that a yellow initially too, and then went to a red?
No,
Am I
that one
remembering this
was.
wrong?
I thought that one was actually given. I thought that one actually wasn't even given as a card. Anthony Taylor gave nothing.
Yeah,
And that
then
made
he
it
came back.
easier for them to give the red. And I'm not even comparing to that.
No. I'm just saying, like, I know what you mean in terms of like overturning it clear and obvious, but when they can pause it and see where the contact is and going by that normally,
seemed like it was high enough for me.
yes,
They're saying there wasn't enough force. He didn't stand on him. And I guess I get it both sides. Let's go to the first instance of the match, which was the foul on Isajap on Robertson.
yes.
Where did you stand on that one? Because as an ex-defender, I'm sure there's been a time or two you've gone to swing a foot, try to clear a ball, miss it a little bit, catch a player, catch them higher than you intend to. You know, that's a weird one, right? There's an offsides. It's a clear and blatant offsides. He still gives the yellow because it was a reckless challenge. Should that have been a red in your mind, or does the player survive because we're 90 seconds into the match?
Oh, that could be a part of it, I guess, too. I did not think it was a red. Like when it's happening,
I didn't either.
I did not think it was a red. I mean, because it's not, there is no intention there. Maybe the defender in me kind of like comes in there. But yeah, he swings it and it's a follow through because he misses it. Been there, done that. I mean, catches him at the knee, and it's not like with the cleats or anything like that. I mean, basically, like Mafia collecting a debt over there is what happened with the baseball bat to the kneecap. Is basically ultimately what happened over there. I didn't think it was a red watching. I was not outraged, and I get outraged a lot as I watch, and that wasn't one of the moments.
So obviously the big talking point and big VAR decision of the match was on the, or not even VAR decision, it was the non-use of VAR to override the decision, would be the Andy Robertson red card. So he gets the red card for denial of a goal scoring opportunity. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of like Kazi. I was in our Discord chat saying, guys, we can whine all we want. It's a bad touch. He clearly takes the guy down. That's a red card all day. Shockingly to me, there are all kinds of people out there saying he's going to appeal this and win on suspension to the Premier League to overturn this, that it should not have been a denial of a goal scoring opportunity. To you, what say that? I
thought it was a red. I thought, when they showed it in slow motion, I'm like, yeah, he's not getting out of this. And that's
what I thought too. I guess.
What is the case against it?
So they're talking a few things. One, by law, they're saying it should be a wrong call because one, as Wilson touches the ball, Wilson takes a poor touch on the ball, and the touch actually takes it away from goal, and it actually isn't going forward. It's actually going out towards the end line. In turn, Van Dijk is coming back to that area. And then ultimately that there was still an opportunity for Jimenez to score the goal. So like no goal scoring opportunity was actually removed because the Fulham player ends up running onto the ball, chipping the keeper. Van Dijk just happens to clear it. The second part of it that they keep talking about is that though it's reckless, Virgil van Dijk's presence and it's Wilson's touch that takes the ball away from goal, not Robertson's touch that sends him in on goal. Personally, I think this is rosy red glasses and people trying to do mental gymnastics to convince themselves that that wasn't just a blatantly moronic and poor defending move. For me, It's a bad touch by Robertson as soon as he makes the touch and goes in for the tackle.
He knew it as that ball was bouncing there,
right?
too. You don't try to control that.
You just got to either clear it, you got to do something with it. For me, it was a red card. I don't have a problem with it. If I were Liverpool, I don't even think I would try to appeal it. Because I feel like if you're ever going to get one over the committee, this isn't the one you want to fight. Like, to me, if you're already one who's considered the squeaky wheel that Liverpool Football Club is in the eyes of the media, why would you attack it? I was shocked when Gary Lineker went off that it was not a red card and that it should never have been awarded a red card and that Liverpool was basically stolen points. To me, that's
it's not
shocking.
given for a goal opportunity. What is the red for? It's not reckless. It's just a bad tackle. So I understand that part. I thought that's why it was a red, because it's almost like you yank somebody, you can't bring him down, they keep going, you still get a yellow afterwards, right? But when we go with like, oh, his touch took the ball that way, now you're simulating the game and what's going to happen. And then Van Dijk is going to run this way. He's going to sneeze. That guy is going to go here. I mean,
but isn't that
it's the last guy,
kind
the last guy.
But isn't that kind of what we ran into with the whole, like, it's not a red card against the foul on Jota, or the one on Mo wasn't a red card, but the one on Saliba against Spurs was a red card, because in that case, he was going towards goal, and in the other one, the ball was going away from goal, and with Jota, he was going more towards
that's
the corner.
why I didn't agree with that either. I thought that should have been. I mean, it's the last guy that they are trying to simplify rules and complicate them at the same time. It feels like, stop adding freaking gray areas. It was the last dude. Done. That should. I mean, the ball is going this way. The ball is going that way, because now you're simulating. And that's what I think happened with the Jota thing. If it's not Jota, it's Nunez. I said it then. If it's somebody fast, the referee's head says, oh, he's going to take off. When you see Jota, well, he might catch up to Jota. That should not come into play. It should be where the player is, where it's happening. Is there somebody between him and the goal? Done. Maybe I'm just too old school for these calls.
And I know we come back twice in that match and we tie the match, right? And we get our point and we could have won it. We probably should have won it with the amount of chances we created in the second half and how well we played. As that central defender, and I'm not asking you, should Virgil have let the goal go in? Is there any part of you in your mind, though, that thinks to yourself, if Virgil just lets that ball go in, we're still down one? Now, granted, at that point, we would have been down 2-0, right? No, yes. we would have been down 2-0, which probably means the game's over anyways. Are you ever better off at 2-0 down with 11 men on the pitch than you are 1-0 down at 10?
No, I don't think you think like that either. And I don't think that tackle was more on that, like it wasn't. Are you talking about Robertson's tackle, or are you talking about the Van Dijk one?
No, my point is if Van Dijk doesn't save that ball from going in the net in that spot, if Van Dijk never saves the ball there, if we go down 2-0 and Jimenez's chip goes in.
Oh, I see what you mean.
They wouldn't have sent Robertson off because it's not a denial of a goal scoring opportunity because you scored the goal.
That's where instinct takes over. Nothing goes in that.
That's what I'm saying. No, and I'm not saying he should have let it go. At 0-0, if he's using his brain, is it a smart decision to let that ball go in the net and not have the man sent off, or you clear the line, you take 0-0?
Yeah, if you can't stop a goal, you stop a goal. Whatever happens is what I would do.
I agree with that completely. So it was a big weekend in the Premier League, obviously. We had Arsenal drop points. We had City drop points. You had Liverpool drop points. Chelsea picked up 3 points against Brentford. So they get within 2 points and a plus having Liverpool's game in hand. Is it still Liverpool's title at this point? Or do you feel like we are into a 2-horse race at this point? It's really going to come down to Liverpool and Chelsea unless Arsenal or City go on a defined run, because 9 and 11 points with that game in hand is a lot of points to make up.
Yeah, I mean, I consider City out of it, not only because of the point difference, but just the way they are. I mean, the way things are. I don't see that as a team anymore. 4 weeks ago, I was like, it's still City. I'm not there now. I don't think that's happening. With Arsenal, unless they get somebody in January that can get him some goals, I think they're going to run into this issue. You can only get so many freaking corner kicks in a game and score off of corner kicks. With Chelsea, their advantage is the fact that they got easier midweek European competition. They can play a totally different team there, totally different team here. But at the end of the day, I feel like it is still Liverpool as the favorite just because you have the more established squad. And even in this game, I look at a team and I see a football team that's played like, if you turn that game on in the second half, you never knew who had 10, who had 11. And that says a lot for a team. And I think they have a manager who can make adjustments and stuff like that. I mean, they're not going to run away with it, maybe as we hoped like 2 weeks ago or something like that. But I guess let me put it this way. If I picked a team to battle with for the title, I probably would have picked Chelsea because I feel like they're the least equipped in terms of experience and stuff like that. They're playing with house money, and that only gets you so far.
Definitely only gets you so far. It usually gets you so far to lose the house's money back to the house. Speaking of not losing, winning is getting on over to the YouTube page right now, giving it a subscription. If you're not subscribed already, please do so. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, all the different places that we're in. Don't forget to check us out on X and Blue Sky now as well. Leave us a comment, a DM if you want to get involved. Check out the shows Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central, plus the Monday and Thursday podcast, the panel show, the Premier League show. Who knows? Maybe someday there'll be a fantasy show back aired on our airways. We're trying to get there. I just want to climb up into a hole for how poorly my fantasy team is doing. So that might be why we're not talking about it much. But in all seriousness, thank you all for watching. As always, we will be back next week. Have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.
Take care.